The Los Angeles Rams get upset by the Carolina Panthers and give the number 1 seed to the Chicago Bears. But I still trust the Rams way more than the Bears. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, The Legacy, Louis DiBiase. On today's show, breaking down a crazy Week 13 in the NFL, the Bills rout the Steelers, and boy, Aaron Rodgers looks like he has done. I told you guys the Indianapolis Colts are careening towards a collapse in the AFC South, but we got to start with the big change in the NFC as the Chicago Bears take the number 1 seed from the Los Angeles Rams. Before we dive in, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number 1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I did not expect it. One of the biggest upsets of the entire weekend, the Los Angeles Rams fall to the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young, man, 11 fourth quarter comebacks, 11 game-winning drives in his career. He was awesome on 3rd and 4th downs in this game, really got it done. This is a very impressive win by the Panthers, and, you know, the Rams dropped their 3rd game of the year, and they lose the NFC lead.
I really was starting to think I was figuring out this year's NFL landscape, and then something like this happens. I'm like, okay, after the Eagles lost to Chicago on Black Friday, I'm like, I think this is the Rams conference. Like, things are starting to shape up on both sides in the AFC and the NFC, and then Carolina does this, and I just say, maybe this is just one of those NFL seasons, kind of like 2017, where the theme, what we know about the league is that we know nothing, and that's kind of what I'm starting to feel after this slate of games, especially this Panthers matchup. What a huge performance, though, from Bryce Young.
No, 100%. He was clutch in this game. He got it done, and bouncing back from a bad performance against San Francisco last week, they absolutely needed this to be able to stay in the hunt. And I don't think that Carolina is ultimately going to make the playoffs, but this is exactly what you wanted your 3rd season of Bryce Young to look like if you're the Panthers. Now, on the other side, the Rams lost this game, and again, I know that they lost the NFC lead. They fell back to earth when we thought this would be a time for them to ascend. I get it, but a lot of weird stuff happened in this game, and really, it was the turnovers that doomed the Rams, as my guys from Locked On Rams talked about after the game.
Rams lose 31-28, Week 13, and one of the uglier games you're going to see Matthew Stafford play. He sets an NFL record, 28 consecutive touchdowns without an interception, and then he throws 2 in his next 3 passes, including one that goes for a pick 6. They can't get lined up. They get a delay a game penalty, and then a strip sack fumble that basically ended the Rams' chances. They fall to 9-3. They fall out of the top spot in the NFC. D-Mac and I have it all for you on Locked On Rams. Don't be late. We'll see you then.
Louis, I got to be honest with you. I'm coming out of this game, and I'm saying the Rams on the road, across the country, on the opposite coast, early time zone game, the Panthers playing for their lives, desperation. I don't think that this is a game where we need to make bold proclamations about the Rams coming out of it. I still trust the Rams. I still think they're the best team in the NFC.
No, I completely agree. I wouldn't even say Chicago's top 3, in my opinion, but the fact of the matter is, right now, they do have the number 1 seed in the NFC. And while home field advantage throughout the playoffs in Los Angeles, I don't think that's a massive advantage for the Rams. Like, for me, coming from an Eagles perspective, if they had to go to L.A. in an NFC championship or a divisional round, I don't think that's the hardest place to play. So I still think the Rams are the best team in the conference, but the fact of the matter is Chicago holds that number 1 seed, and having to go to Soldier Field in January, if they can hold on to that, it doesn't matter if they're the number 1 team in the NFC. That seed will make it really hard to stop them in the playoffs if they don't stop themselves. So That's kind of what I'm looking at, is like the Rams having to go to Chicago would be really difficult. Even if I'm with you, I think this is more about what the Panthers and Bryce Young did right. But the record is the record, and Chicago has that 1 seed, and that's really important.
And think about Jared Goff, much better indoors. Matthew Stafford and the Rams. I mean, I don't think that they're terrible outside like
no,
the
but
Jared
they're built
Goff
for the
issue,
indoors. Yeah,
exactly. They're built. So going to Chicago in the dead of the winter in January, that could be a big advantage, especially for a Bears team that runs the ball very well. And my guy Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears sat back after watching all this on Sunday off a Black Friday win over the Eagles and said, "Hey, it may not be pretty, but enjoy where the Bears are at right now, top of the NFC."
The Chicago Bears are now the number 1 seed in the NFC playoff race, and nobody believes in them. And that's okay. Keep letting the Chicago Bears fly under the radar. They'll just keep winning games. And show me the team in the NFC that you do trust, that you do believe in. Is it the Rams? Because they just lost to the Carolina Panthers. The Buccaneers have been banged up and struggling. The Eagles just lost to the Chicago Bears. We've seen the Green Bay Packers lose to bad teams. We've seen the Detroit Lions crap the bed in recent weeks. The Seattle Seahawks certainly can't be trusted with Sam Darnold. So why not the Chicago Bears? Sure, they have flaws. Sure, they win games a little closer than they should, but they're winning those games. And not very many other teams are winning the way the Chicago Bears are winning this season. So enjoy the ride and see how this team finishes this regular season and ride some of this momentum into the playoffs. We'll break down how the Chicago Bears are playing so well and what to expect as they face the Green Bay Packers twice in the next 3 weeks over on the Locked On Bears podcast. Find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Lauren's right. The next 2 out of 3 weeks they play the Packers, that'll determine their season. But I just have to say, Louie, I know we're on different ends of the spectrum. The team I cover on a daily basis, number 1 pick, back-to-back years most likely. Your team coming off a Super Bowl championship. But I know that there are Eagles teams that were good that people said, oh, we don't believe in them, like 2017, where we can't buy this. You know what I mean? And as somebody who had a team in 2020 and 2021 in the Titans that was really good, won a lot of games, and nobody believed in, I'd sure rather have a team that won that nobody believed in than a team that is actually terrible and everybody knows is the truth. So if you're a Bears fan right now, absolutely enjoy this. And like you were saying and pointing out, that home field advantage, and then like I'm saying, combined with that run game that they got and their ability there, the Bears could win a playoff game, but I still don't, I'm going to be honest, I don't trust them to come out of the NFC, but maybe the craziness of this season would allow them to do it.
And the way they force turnovers on the defensive side of the football, the
need.
way that they continue to figure out how to win games with under 2 minutes to go in these one-score matchups, that in this year's NFL might be enough. Now, I'm absolutely taking the under on their win total next year. I think there is definitely a regression coming.
Yep.
I do think they're pretenders from a long-term perspective. But for this year, with the way the NFL is, if they get home field advantage, they absolutely have a chance. Lauren made a great point. I mean, the Lions might not make the playoffs. The Eagles look like they might have another historic collapse on their hands like 2023. If all that happens and the playoffs run through Chicago, I could see them get to an NFC title. I'm not predicting them to get out of the conference either, but I do think in this year's league that Chicago is a legitimate team in that conference to do some sort of damage.
Yeah, I think both things can be true at the same time, that Chicago has as good of a chance as any team right now, but I still don't trust them the most, or they're probably not even in my top 3 teams that I would trust in the NFC right now. But speaking of a collapse, boy, if you go to the AFC South, things have gotten very, very interesting, as not only the Colts were set up for a collapse that continues to kind of come to fruition, but they got even worse news with 2 injuries, one on offense and one on defense, that make things even murkier for the Colts going forward. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America, and for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams, for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. Let's be honest, though, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track prices that drop in real time. You can get alerts when great seats come open. You can buy tickets the moment that they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup more realistic than ever instead of being impossible. Prices include the fees up front, which I love. There's no surprises at checkout. You could set it up to get alerts for specific teams or matches, making it super easy to grab tickets the moment that they drop instead of missing out. Plus, you can pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for the fine print. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, and event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, Louis, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL, breaking down a crazy Week 13. We got some big changes and some conference leads, some division leads. We talked about the NFC changing hands from the Rams to the Bears, but now we got a change of the guard in the AFC South as the Indianapolis Colts lose another one, and it's got people in Indianapolis pretty worried, as my guy Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts talked about after the game.
It looks like the Indianapolis Colts might be in a little bit of trouble here. They are now 8-4 on the season after dropping 20-16 to the Houston Texans. Their first loss here at home at Lucas Oil Stadium on the season. The Jaguars won their 8-4. The Texans are now 7-5. So the Colts once had a firm grip on the AFC South, but now it's kind of up for grabs at this point. Colts, Jaguars next week, monumental game. But this matchup itself, really kind of tough to diagnose. This is a game of such minuscule details, and the Colts had some drops. They had a missed extra point. The officiating, I hate to be officiating guy, but I think it did play a role. All on one series, you have what should have been a delay a game, phantom DPI, and then the extra point at the end of the drive. Did it even go in? We're going to talk way more about this on the Cold Squad Show, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Look, the officiating was certainly questionable in this loss to the Houston Texans. The extra point, did it go in? Did it not go in? There was some pass interference calls. Honestly, there were bad calls on both sides. But we also get the news that Daniel Jones is playing with a fractured fibula in his leg. It's going to hinder his lateral movement. Sauce Gardner goes out in this game with a calf injury, and he's probably going to miss a couple of weeks at best. Their schedule, very difficult. And I've been talking about this for 2 weeks now, that there could be an impending collapse for the Indianapolis Colts. They're at Jacksonville next week. They have historically struggled in Jacksonville. Then they're at Seattle. Seattle is a better football team than the Indianapolis Colts. They're home in prime time against the 49ers. 49ers could absolutely win that game. Then they play Jacksonville again. Then they're at Houston to finish the season. And we just saw what Houston did in CJ Stroud's first game back after a couple of weeks. They won that game anyways. It could have won by a lot more. Indianapolis is in trouble of not only losing the division here like they did today to Jacksonville, but to miss the playoffs entirely. And after they make a huge trade for Sauce Gardner, give up 2 first-round picks, and Adonai Mitchell, who went for over 100 yards and a touchdown, and the Jets win over the Falcons today, everything since that trade has been downhill quick for the Indianapolis Colts.
I do feel like they kind of drank the Kool-Aid a little bit too early on Daniel Jones and who they were. And I think, I'm not saying that everything about them this year was a mirage, but kind of like the Chicago Bears, it didn't feel like they really found something here for the long term that's going to make them a championship contender. And now at this point, Tyler, like you said, with all of that kind of collapsing, they could end up going from the number 1 seed in the conference to maybe 3rd in the division, because I think the Houston Texans defense right now is the best unit in that division, the way they are playing on all 3 levels, and they're only 1 game back. They're the team in this division with all the playoff experience. They have a playoff win in the last 2 years. CJ Stroud is back now in the lineup. Davis Mills did his job. There's a possibility where Jacksonville and Houston is ahead of Indianapolis. And again, in this year's NFL, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I would keep an eye on Houston. I think this last month, they've been one of the hotter teams in football. And considering how Jekyll and Hyde the Jaguars and Colts have been, yeah. I could see just the steady Eddie Texans finding a way at the end to pull off what feels like a miracle considering where they were at one point and getting this division again.
100%. They started out 0-3. They were in a bad spot.
And they looked like a dead dog the way they were playing on the offensive side of the football.
100%. You're right about that. And, Houston makes the AFC South super, super competitive because you can't just rule them out with Indy and Jacksonville at the top. But I do just want to make one last point on Indianapolis. The formula is clear. Just load the box. In an NFL right now that loves to go with 2 high safeties, and what everybody's doing is 2 high safeties, you load the box right now, 3 out of the last 4 games the Colts have lost. And in those games, 14 carries, 45 yards. That's 3.2 yards per carry for Jonathan Taylor against Pittsburgh. 16 carries, 58 yards, 3.6 yards per carry against Kansas City. Then this week, 21 carries for only 85 yards. It's only 4 yards per carry. Jonathan Taylor, when they bottle up Jonathan Taylor, the Colts offense is a totally different beast, and now teams have seen what the Colts like to do with Daniel Jones, and they're starting to adjust to it, and things aren't as easy as they were at the beginning of the season.
Well, it's kind of similar to what Shane Steichen did in Philadelphia. Everything about the passing game is predicated on what they're doing on the ground. They have to have success on first and second down running the football. If this team has to play behind the sticks, Daniel Jones is not built to carry that kind of football team, especially now with an injury. Yeah, the Colts are in real trouble. I might, if I could put some money down on it now, I don't know if this team is getting into the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's fair to wonder if they not only are squandering their division lead and a conference lead at one point when they were 7-1 early in the year, but if they're squandering their playoff chances. And again, the Jacksonville Jaguars get to play them 2 more times. Right. The Jags are 8-4. Statistically speaking, with the tiebreakers, the Jags now lead the division. And boy, Jacksonville looks like they're rolling now. And I can tell you from seeing a lot of Jacksonville Jaguars football in my life, they are a team that loves to throw down a stinker in a situation like this. But they absolutely did not. They throttled the Titans 25-3 like a good team should do. And my guy Tony Wiggins talked about that after the game.
All right, a very workmanlike game for the Jacksonville Jaguars in Nashville as they beat the Tennessee Titans 25-3 on a game that the Jaguars pretty much dominated from start to finish. The Titans are a 1-win team for a reason, but the Jaguars still had too many penalties. There's a lot of stuff that they got to clean up before they play that game next week against the Indianapolis Colts that's going to be likely for first place in the AFC South as long as the Houston Texans hold on to that win. But Trevor Lawrence was very, very nice today. 16 out of 27, 229 and 2 touchdowns. Didn't get a lot out of the running game, but there was a Brian Thomas Jr. sighting along with Brenton Strange and Jacoby Myers. They got really loose in the passing game today. So the Jaguars improved to 8-4. We'll see what happens with Houston and Indy. And then, well, actually, yeah, they're already tied. Indy lost. So it's 8-4. The Jaguars sit atop the division. We'll talk about it more here on Locked On Jaguars this week.
And that's exactly what I would call it. It was a workman performance. I mean, starting left tackle Walker Little is out in the middle of the game. Jacksonville is missing Patrick McCarry on the offensive line. On defense, they're without Travon Walker. Eric Armstead, that's an injury to watch. All of a sudden, healthy all week, and then out with a hand injury all of a sudden on Sunday morning. Sounds like maybe somebody had too much fun on Broadway on Saturday night. That's my theory there. But without Travon Walker, without Eric Armstead, and Jacksonville just made it work. They didn't even run the ball well in this game, and that's what Jacksonville has been known for. Trevor Lawrence was really solid. They have a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the ball after the trades and everything, even without Travis Hunter in there. That defense is well coordinated and well coached. They have a good plan. They took away everything down the field. It was just a really solid, again, workmanlike professional performance from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that gives me, I don't want to say hope. Hope isn't the word, but some confidence that maybe this is a different version of Jacksonville than we've seen in the past.
Right, because this is the kind of game, even though that's one obviously they should win, that they maybe barely stay alive in.
100%.
They do
or
lose
keep it close at the end. Just make it not. No, they handled their business today.
And I do think they're pretty consistent and have leaned on the turnover battle a lot this year and late game heroics. And I still could totally see you got 2 games left against the Colts. You got that matchup against the Broncos. I could still see Trevor Lawrence putting in a couple more stinker performances. And like I said, Houston being steady Eddie just kind of jumps them by default in that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, this is a well-coached team. I still think Trevor Lawrence is that roller coaster ride. But Liam Cohen, I got to give him credit. I mean, there's been a couple times I'm waiting for Jacksonville to give way to Kansas City in the wild card race, or Buffalo jumps them, or here comes Baltimore, and they've been able to kind of maintain consistency, and that has been the issue with this team for years now. So maybe this is a different Jaguars team that can hang on and win this division. Though those 2 games against Indy, though, I mean, that's going to define their season.
100%. I mean, I hate the phrase "they control their destiny" because it's an oxymoron, because destiny inherently cannot be controlled. It's your destiny. You can't control destiny. It doesn't even make sense. But they control their path is the right way to say it, I would say, for Jacksonville. Now, I think you're right about Trevor Lawrence. He isn't a guy who elevates. I think he's a trailer, not a tractor at this point in his career. But I do think that Jacksonville has good enough coaching. Their offensive line has been good enough this year. The run game, the defense, like, I think they have enough, if Trevor Lawrence doesn't shoot them in the foot, that they can keep things going. Now, the problem is, you look at a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't think that they have the roster to carry Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers out there in that game against Buffalo, boy, he was looking old. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. You got bowl games, big basketball matchups, the playoff push. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including Texas, California, Florida, and Georgia. Prize Picks has an extra layer of excitement when you're talking about holiday sports. You can create a lineup in less than 1 minute, and the app makes the process super smooth, super intuitive. Again, you just pick more or less on player stats like field goals scored, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. They have a new stacks feature that lets you choose the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. So you could take more on a quarterback's passing yards, touchdowns, and rushing yards. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. It's Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, Louis, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Rams and the Bears at the top of the NFC. We talked about the Jags, Texans, and Colts at the top of the AFC South. Now we need to move into the Pittsburgh Steelers and Buffalo Bills, which was one of the best matchups of the weekend. But the game certainly did not live up to that hype because, boy, the Steelers are crashing back down to earth. Before we dive in, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first to listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. But, Louis, I got to tell you, so I mentioned my dad on a lot of my content, very strong pillar of my football experience, former Pee Wee coach, president of the Pee Wee organization. I spent all my days on the football field, and football was the religion in my house. We went to football on Sundays. But, we do the show. I try to give, nuanced takes, be a smart football guy, talk about these teams in an intelligent way. But sometimes 66-year-old Rick Rowland has the best take. He said, man, Rodgers sure looks old. And my dad's been a Packers fan for, since the 60s. He knows Rodgers in and out. And on a specific play, and my dad brought up this play to me, and I'm like, you know what? You're right. When Joey Bosa gets the strip sack and hits Aaron Rodgers in the back, and Rodgers busts his chin on the ground, and he's bleeding down his nose, and the Bills pick it up and run it for a touchdown, and it's 17-7, and Rodgers is getting up like the Tin Man without the oil can. And I'm just like, man, he does look old. And the reality is that you could probably win with this version of Aaron Rodgers if you had a really good team around him. But the Steelers are just not that good. Arthur Smith is not a good offensive coordinator. He is too conservative with his play calling. He just tries to outsmart the game with his personnel usage. They have a good wide receiver in DK Metcalf, but not enough outside of that. Like, I think back to the Peyton Manning Denver Broncos Super Bowl team. Peyton Manning was not the Peyton Manning that we think of when we think of Peyton Manning in that season. But their team was so good. They couldn't beat the Buffalo Bills with their third and fourth string offensive tackles in. And when you have Josh Allen running around on that fourth down, making guys miss, getting out of pressure, hitting a guy, playmaking out of the pocket, and then you look at Rodgers, again, 10-man, barely being able to get up, it just shows the disparity in quarterback ability, and the Steelers don't have the roster to make up for that gap. I'm so out on the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point. They've completely disappointed me.
I mean, they've been trying to take the shortcut for years now to become championship contenders, and it's why they've been stuck in, I think, the worst position in sports, like totally stuck in purgatory. I don't think they'll probably learn from this, and they'll run it back next year with some other retread starting quarterback with all this experience in the world, but that's what you saw out there today was, like you said, Aaron Rodgers looking old is an understatement, especially when he's playing with just one hand, and they don't have the talent on offense, and their defense has significantly regressed. I mean, they have to rely on Asante Samuel Jr., who's been dealing with a neck injury all year, hasn't played since week 4 of last season. Darius Slay's a healthy scratch, just another older player they brought in this year to, again, just fill another hole, just another bridge, Band-Aid signing. Like, it's the Pittsburgh Band-Aids. That's who they are, and I mean, I think they eventually have to make some sort of dramatic change because, Tyler, of all this kind of chaotic run in the AFC, this battle for a couple spots, I do not think Pittsburgh is one of those teams coming out. They had a 4 or 5 game lead in this division and completely blew it. So if this doesn't push them over the edge to make change, I don't know if there will be anything that ever makes this team make change.
Well, I am going to completely speculate here, but there was a report this weekend from, I believe, Josina Anderson that there is a high-level NFL coach who is really looking for a change of scenery, and I wonder if it would be Mike Tomlin.
Maybe he'll just force them into change. Yeah, I mean,
it just makes you wonder because it just feels like things are getting stale in Pittsburgh. And look, you don't want to get rid of a good coach just because it's time for change, I guess, but sometimes you got to. Sometimes it's just time for change, and they need to change something about their approach, whether that's a different coach who can get more out of the offensive side of the football or whether it's how they approach the quarterback position in the offseason.
Because I just don't know if Mike Tomlin will ever want to hit the reset button, right? I feel like, somebody covering the Eagles, that happened in 2012. Eventually they said, Andy Reid's a great coach, but it's run its course here. And obviously he went on to win 3 Super Bowls in Kansas City, but the Eagles
got 2 themselves.
Exactly.
The Eagles got 2 themselves. That's a win-win.
It was never going to happen in Philadelphia for Andy Reid at that point. It's not going to happen again with Mike Tomlin unless, like a John Harbaugh, he slips into a Lamar Jackson with the 27th pick, but I just think even that at this point, like they've reached the point of no return with this. And I think maybe he sees that and has to move on. Like after Rodgers, I don't know what your next plan is. Is it Kyler Murray next year? Is it bringing back
Tua?
Justin Fields? I mean, Tua, I don't know what else you're doing here. You're stuck in this purgatory, and they're still probably going to scrap together another win or two that puts them right around that 20 to 22nd overall pick. And here we go again. It's Groundhog's Day in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and quite frankly, they don't have the scouting system, in my opinion, that Baltimore does to be able to try to hit on something like that. Now, the Buffalo Bills, on the other hand, got a big-time win, 26-7, and my guy Joe Marino said it. This is exactly how the Bills need to win.
The Buffalo Bills get a much-needed 26-7 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers and played the exact style of game they needed to play. It was a cold, breezy day in Pittsburgh. The Bills were without both starting offensive tackles, no Dalton Kincaid, no Josh Palmer. It was going to be tough to throw the football. They needed to be able to lean on their running backs and their run game. That's exactly what the Bills did. 51 rushes, 249 yards, and a touchdown, overcoming a bad James Cook fumble, overcoming a Josh Allen interception. The Bills defense responds, gets 2 huge second-half takeaways, and the Bills pull away with a much-needed win as they were the final seed in the AFC entering the week. They stay alive with their win and improve to 8-4.
Some of the concerns I have about the Bills, though, were not alleviated in this game. They don't have enough talent at wide receiver, and right now with Dalton Kincaid banged up, that makes it tough. But even with him back, they just don't have enough. I mean, their leading receiver on the day was James Cook, 3 catches, 33 yards. And when you saw a team like the Cincinnati Bengals earlier this year eviscerate the Steelers defense with wide receiver play and wide receivers that just couldn't be covered, it just shows like, hey, Buffalo was able to get it done, but when they play real teams that are going to be who they really need to be, they don't have the talent on the outside to win one-on-one and make plays when they need to.
Yeah, this team can't win in any kind of game. I think they have to specifically play a certain style of football like he was talking about. And I still think in this year's NFL that could be good enough in the AFC when you have Josh Allen keep the game close, run the football, play opportunistic defense, let number 17 win it late. You can win. But yeah, you're right. Like, what happens if you do run into a hot offense in the postseason and they're having success that day? Can this team win in a shootout-like fashion? I mean, they did early on in the year because of Allen, but lately that's not been the case. So I think this was the style of win they needed against this kind of team to get back on track, because they were only a game up for the 7th seed in the conference. But you do wonder what the ceiling of this football team is, because it does look like they have to win one brand, this one style of football game, and if it's a different way, I don't know if this year's Bills are like the last ones that can win any style of game.
I got to tell you, overall, it's just a big weekend of games that regardless of the result, I don't really feel differently about the teams. I still think the Rams are the best team in the NFC. I still think the Panthers are just a scrappy team we can't take serious. The Bears are a good team, but I don't think they're a great team like they look. You know, like the Colts, I've seen them collapse in the last couple of weeks. I've had faith in Jacksonville, and this is kind of the same with the Bills. Yeah, they won, but I just don't see the Bills as good as they've been in previous years. But we always do a little whip around here, Louie, to finish things off real quick. We'll go through the 49ers dominate the Browns 26-8. The Dolphins get another win. They keep winning, 21-17 over the Saints. The Jets get their 3rd win of the season with a walk-off field goal, 27-24 over the Falcons. The Bucks hold on to win over the Cardinals, 20-17. The Seahawks drub the Vikings with Max Brosmer 26-0. And then the Chargers take off and beat the Raiders 31-14. Out of all those other games on Sunday, anything stand out to you?
For me, Tampa Bay, they needed that win so badly just to stop the bleeding. And with Carolina getting a statement win over the Rams, I think Tampa Bay needed that. If they can just get in, win the division, that team can do real damage in the postseason. But the injuries have been so insurmountable that getting this win gives them a little bit of breathing room. They needed that.
I just want to say Shedeur Sanders struggled. He was fighting with Jerry Jeudy on the sideline. It was not good. I just felt like that's newsworthy because people care about Shedeur Sanders. I mean, it's his first couple of starts. Not going to write him off yet, but it wasn't like he lit it on fire right out of the gate. But they're in a good spot to get a win next week as they take on the Tennessee Titans at home, and Myles Garrett continues to be absolutely incredible. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Legacy Louis DiBiase. As we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.